Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the community tick. And when does that happen? With more fun and energy than on Pundit Thursday, when the leading lights of New Haven journalism come together.
Friday. Listen.
I'm working on it, Babs.
It's
Thursday
Pundit Fridays
Friday,
on Thursdays.
Yeah. And that's where we look at the news from the past week, the headlines of the past week, and what were they really about with the leading lights of New Haven journalism. Babs Rawls-Ivy, host of Love Babs Love Talk, and the editor of The Inner City. Markeisha Ricks, veteran journalist and mentor to the next generation. And Lucy Gelman, the omnipresence of New Haven and editor of the Arts paper. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
So as usual, I got my
Happy
surprise
Friday on
quotes.
Thursday.
Happy Friday. Yeah, on Thursday.
And Tuesday was Monday this week.
That's
Yes.
right.
I hate when that happens.
So, folks, I'm going to ask you who said this. Ready?
Uh-oh.
Now, the first one's a trick.
It's always a trick, though.
But I'm going to give away the trick.
Okay.
The trick is that nobody said this. Several people said this. This is a collection of things people said.
Raised voices.
And if you know right away, you might want to just hear it out a little bit anyway. Quote, "This pick is not based on who's the most qualified, but what color they are." Quote, "New Haven gets the people it deserves. It wants a cop of the right color, period." Quote, "Kowtowing to a few people because they don't like the skin color of someone else is outrageous." Quote, "A good cop and excellent leader by all measures is chased out of town due to the color of skin." Quote, "First aboard of Ed, fire chief. Every other department head has to be black. Now the police chief must be black. Why? When is it enough?" Now, why am I reading these quotes today, and what does that have to do with the news of the week?
I was about to say, because the new police chief definitely isn't black unless he wants to tell us something. Last time I checked, Charles
Are
Jacobson
these white people lamenting?
was a good old white guy.
These are
And
white
he really
people
is a good
whining.
white guy.
White people
Definitely
whining.
white
Why
people
can't you black people be in your
Is
place?
this commenters?
Yes, Lucy Gelman is brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay.
I assumed it was comments.
Yeah,
Now,
we
what
knew
were
it
they
was
commenting on and when?
Well,
Was that about the previous
I also
chief?
say,
It was about why can't I?
So the
I
news
can
this
see her
week is New
face.
Haven has a new police chief.
Yes.
His name is Carl Jacobson. He is in fact white.
Is.
And the reason I'm doing these comments is because before Carl Jacobson, the mayor
was
tried to
Renee.
make someone else chief named Renee Dominguez, and New Haven didn't want her. They didn't want her for a whole lot of reasons that had to do with going back to the bust your head, we're unaccountable policing of the
I was about to
1980s.
say her
and
complexion
all
was like
white.
the least of the problems
Yeah.
that people had
So
with her.
when she was turned down by the Board of Alders, people were insisting that nobody had anything against her except that she was white. So those were comments that people kept writing week after
No.
week saying the reason they turned her down is because she's the wrong color. And we
Yeah.
kept writing the Independent. That's not true. In fact, the Board of Alders voted her down, the majority minority, and no one ever said the chief needed to be white. And furthermore, and this was the irony, is that everybody almost to a person who wasn't white who was not liking that chief,
Wanted the
Jacob
current
they
chief
were
that was-
pushing a white guy, Carl Jacobson.
and the hearing testimony for Carl Jacobson was amazing. It was amazing.
People, they arrested my son. Thank you. You took good care of him. Yeah.
The people who came out to say, I want this man to be police chief, like, you don't get that a lot. It was amazing.
So here's my existential question, or sorry, large question. We live in a world now where it's hard to have people re-examine an opinion that they like based on facts. So we kept saying for months, because obviously I had my bias, which is that I felt by pushing Renee Dominguez, the mayor was ignoring everyone who wasn't white in New Haven in the department, but also embracing a approach to policing that we spent decades getting rid of, and he was bringing back. No one wanted to hear that. It said it's just because they don't want her because she's white. So I said, well, look, if they're really pushing this other white guy, why is everyone saying that? So finally, like, I talked to a reporter who pressed that question, like, oh, someone have to be the right skin color? I said, well, where'd you get that idea? And so I said, well, I think you're going to see that, like, a lot of people who aren't white are going to support this other guy's way. So well, we'll see. I certainly hope so. So now I'm thinking,
So,
it happened.
so have you been able to talk to this reporter?
No, but some commenters I'm engaging with. Like, so it's a Tuesday night. It was unanimous vote on the board. It was unanimous for white
On
guy.
our very diverse board of
Yes.
alders.
So will people then? But then there was another comment this week saying it again. I said, he said, well, what happened? Why? I said, because you guys were lying the whole time.
Who was lying?
The commenters and the city
the
hall
commenters were lying. I
people
thought they were saying the
and
press
the
was lying.
violent cops who all said it's only because she's white and people are racist in New Haven.
No, it wasn't ever, because just It wasn't.
But how do you
ever-
get people
yeah.
to change their mind? I guess is what I'm
You
asking.
can't.
Well,
You
Based
some
on
people
can't.
facts.
don't. Yeah.
Because those same people are going, oh, they just hired him because they can control him, or because he's in good with a certain whatever. Like, there's always going to be a narrative. You like, the only way to change that is for him to go out and be an amazing police chief.
Any thoughts on the chief?
No, if that's what the people want, that's what the people get.
Go
Are you looking at me or at Markeisha?
Go Carl.
Florida? Okay,
Yeah.
folks.
Go
Yeah,
Carl,
go Carl.
right? Go
I-
Carl.
I will
Listen,
say,
it
like-
doesn't hurt us, to have a
Right.
chief that people support.
Yes.
One. So that's good. That means he has an open vein to really talk to people, because he's about to deal.
He's
like,
connected
he
to the community.
literally has he's been handed the most support to deal with one of the worst things a police chief could have to deal with,
That's
which is a
right.
department that is being put on national trial
That's right.
for its behavior.
And someone who
good luck,
said
Carl.
on the record in the New York Times,
That
and
this
and
was
has
not-
said with the Independent, I want justice. I want to see justice for Randy Cox.
Okay, so that becomes
Right?
the transition now. You now have a head start on what the next quote's about.
Okay.
Ready? Who said the following this week in the news? I'm not tricking. This actually was said this week.
Tricking.
Quote.
Aren't you always tricking, Paul?
Trying. Okay. If federal action is warranted, the Justice Department will pursue every available avenue to the full extent.
Wasn't that the
Of the
Justice
law.
Department?
Who?
Uh,
The U.S. Attorney now is Vanessa
yes.
Avery.
Yes,
Grew up
yes.
in New Orleans.
mm-hmm.
She's a U.S. Attorney. She issued that statement yesterday about
Oh,
Randy.
The Cox case.
so the Richard Randy Cox case, in which a man on June 19th was being transported after getting arrested without incident in a police van, transport van, no seatbelts. Driver slams on the brakes. Randy Cox's face slams against the wall. He's paralyzed half his body. He says, I can't move. Instead of waiting for an ambulance, they bring him to the one Union Avenue lockup, in which 5 cops are there saying he's lying, ordering him to stand up, throwing him in a wheelchair, dragging him across the floor while his body's half paralyzed, cuffing his feet on the floor while he's put on his stomach.
Which is so interesting, because he's like, I can't move, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
cuff you.
So then they brought him.
I don't believe you.
I mean, also like Betsy Segee, who didn't you cover the week long? Was it more than a week? Was it 2 weeks?
That was
The-
Chris Peak covered that.
As crispy.
Okay.
So in any case, as a result of that incident, it went national. Everything was on video. The police department was great in putting out information right away, answering Tom Breen's good questions, and then within 48 hours having all the videos out. The whole country's been able to see this now. Attorney Ben Crump is in town. There's a mass march. The 5 cops are on leave. At least a few of them will probably be fired. And the state's attorney is looking into criminal investigation. I'm just wondering so the federal government then, after, I think it was because John Valleca, a former cop, was on this radio the other day and saying, I think the federal department, Justice Department might look at a pattern of behavior and maybe do a consent decree. And then she puts out a release saying, we don't know yet. We're looking at it. We're cooperating with everyone. Well, I guess in addition to your folks' overall settlement, because obviously it was terrible that it happened and they devalue black life. But I was wondering, teasing out which aspects of the case struck out most to you and what specifically you think the police department should do.
I mean,
Or is it just kind of speak for itself? Like you don't treat people this way.
listen, this is
Bam.
what I know. White supremacy is ingrained in us so deeply that even officers of
right.
color will do the work of white supremacy.
That's right.
So that's where I'm at. So
That's where John Valleca was at too. That's essentially what he
So
said.
yeah, so you can't. I mean, to root it out, it's not just now. This is no longer just about white cops devaluing black lives.
And Randy
This
Cox is black.
This is about cops of color not valuing black lives and hiding behind this sense of blue lineness, which is white supremacy.
Yeah.
So I think there has to be a real question of what do we want police officers to be? Who do we want them to be characteristically? Who do we want them to be? And ask that question point blank when they show up to apply for these jobs. Who do you want to be in this job?
So you'll be reading later, Maya McFadden was at the swearing in of the new class of cops. It's a pretty diverse class. One woman joined because of Black Lives Matter. She's black. She said, I want to be the right change.
So
and
this-
another woman said, I became a cop because my son was scared of police. I don't want him to be scared.
So for me, this is, I comb through, because we used to do, once upon a time at the New Haven Independent, a lot of stories about, individual cops and the work that they do and how they do their work. And a few things stand out in my mind. Like, one of the things that stand out in my mind is Betsy Segee. I remember when Betsy Segee worked for the Special Victims Unit.
She was good at that.
She was very good at
Because
that.
she had personal experience as a kid of what that means, and that's for like child abuse and things like
Exactly.
I know. I helped found that piece and clean that up. And
But I
You
say
were-
that
and
because
people should know you were a police commissioner. Babs.
exactly, and I say that because that's always the Betsy Segee I remember, and listening to her, I remember I cannot get it out of my mind. Her telling this story with a straight face because it drained the color out of the face of all of the colleagues in the room at Comstat that day, particularly the men. Because here's this woman, I think she was a mom at the time too, or I mean, she's a mom, but maybe she had young kids at the time, but she was talking about a child abuse case where the boyfriend of the mom had held the 3-year-old hand to the fire, like a flame. And this child was so badly burned. And I was like, I can't imagine what it means to be somebody to come into policing thinking you're helping and you get exposed to people who do some of the worst things.
Her father lit the fire in the arsons for Angelo Reyes, who was paid to do that, burn down buildings.
Okay. But again, so
I'm saying the fire
I'm saying
thing is
these
kinda-
things though is like complexity, and someone who
Correct.
who experiences that kind of trauma to think that doesn't show up in the kind of work they do. So like to your point about who are cops going to be, I think and Anthony Campbell, before he was chief, said this. I was sitting in like a Saturday event where he was doing a community talk where he was at a church talking to people, and people were saying, we want these relationships with our local police, and the fact that we don't have them and we can't really see them as real people. They're just cops to us. And he was saying, when you come into the police department, you have this kind of bright-eyed, bushy tail, I want to help everybody. And then you see the realities of the things that people are doing and having done to them because of things that are way outside of their control, right? They live in a culture that helps perpetuate the kinds of things they end up involved in. And so by the 5th year, you're kind of worn thin. So I don't know if we have to have a conversation about higher turnover in policing or what kind of supports so that police officers can be the kinds of people, because I think under the current, not just the culture, but conditions of what they are asked to do, it rubs them raw. So they have to become these kind of unfeeling people.
Rubs them raw.
Well, this is why Harry and I had this conversation about
it erases the humanity from
That's
them.
right.
when the police department didn't want to have mental health checks, which I think should be required.
Absolutely.
Not because we think that they're mentally unbalanced, but because of these very things that happen to you on a regular basis, that you should have an opportunity to be able to unpack what you saw and experienced so that you don't carry this year to year to year to year. That
just doesn't
sitting
build up.
in therapy, whether it's group therapy and one-on-one, should be mandatory. And your supervisor should sign off on that every 90 days.
And as you know,
so
there's a
that
cult-
officers are not left carrying these harsh things into their private and personal lives.
Absolutely. But also that sort of machismo, right? Like white supremacy and patriarchy are so deeply, deeply intertwined that it's like a chicken egg thing. And so there's all of this stuff that right now we expect police to deal with that other systems should be catching that we have not allocated resources towards. So we're a very resource-rich country. We also have all of this ARPA money coming to us, right? And for me, I have this big question of, are we going to allocate resources toward things that police are catching or
Other than cameras?
or trying
Other
to
than cameras.
thank you, or trying to catch right now. But I think there's also this sort of machismo, and so when people experience vicarious trauma, there's this, oh, I don't need therapy, oh, that's for other people, oh, that's for people who have softer skin and are letting it get to them. Everyone needs therapy. Everyone, especially if they are experiencing this kind of vicarious trauma, should absolutely be doing mental health check-ins, because otherwise they will replicate the systems of trauma that they are experiencing.
So
Well,
interesting.
I think if they the way you normalize it is make it part of
Absolutely.
the commitment to the job.
I agree.
And it
I
can't
agree.
be a checkbox commitment.
That's
though.
right.
Like it literally has to, like the whole buddy system of having a fellow police officer you work with, a field officer or whatever, like that process has to be beyond just I'm teaching you how to do your job or I'm giving you these physical tools to do your job. Your ability to access help when you need it, to accept help and have it be available to you, like that has, like you said, has to be part of the norm.
Yes.
And we're talking about that on Pundit Thursday, WNHH-FM, with the best pundits in business, Babs Rawls-Ivy, Markeisha Ricks, Lucy Gilman. But you guys are so interesting. There's such a great take on it about, because I remember hearing so much after a few traumatic events at the department, the difficulty the top police officers were having getting the officers to go to Employee Assistance Program, EAP, because the exact thing Lucy was talking about. There is sort of this old-fashioned notion that you're a wuss if you need mental
That's
health.
why you have to build it in.
Exactly.
It is a
And-
persisting notion. I mean,
Exactly.
we see this
And
in many professions.
There has to be a wholesale shift to
That's right.
you are a wuss if you don't access these, and you also are in danger of losing your job.
Yes.
And this needs to be, and you need to let it get in you, like from the start, like from the very beginning. Like it's obviously much harder to do when you're already 10 years into this game and you've had 10 years of believing that I don't need that type of help.
But I could go home and beat my wife or drink
Exactly.
myself
And
under
this
the
came up
table.
because
or
of the,
pick up the gun and shoot myself.
because
Yes.
of the high
'Cause that has
prevalence
happened.
of domestic abuse in the department.
There is.
It's just so people can catch up who didn't follow Tom Breen's stories. Betsy Segee was the sergeant in charge of the detention facility at the police department who led the charge saying, "You're lying, you're drunk, stand up." They dragged him to the floor and they did everything wrong. She previously had an incident where she was suspended but then left in this position where she had not followed the rules in checking on a
Is she a medical professional?
No.
no.
Oh.
And she did not check when they were supposed to do check-ins on a prisoner who then hung himself. He died in lockup, and she gave bad excuses saying, "Well, I counted my people do the rounds." She wasn't supervising them. So
And it
The-
sounds like Betsy's not serving in a role that she's good for. It's probably time for Betsy to. And honestly, I don't know. I think Betsy's been at her job a while. She might be up for retirement. Like, not yet. Okay, she should be getting close though. Yeah. No. I feel like she's been an officer for a really long time.
yeah, we haven't been there that long.
Oh,
I think
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think she's been about 12 years. 14.
and 12 years is a long time.
It is. It is a long time for that job.
It's a
That's
long
why
time.
I'm
and
never.
and
I
then maybe
never,
maybe it's a type of job that you shouldn't go to for 20 years.
except for some people. But like if you're
Like
temperament-
like depending on what
Yeah.
track you're on. But I mean, again,
especially
those are all
special
things.
victims. You were talking about those
yeah, like
cases. Really,
she
I couldn't
has
do it. I couldn't do
a
it.
real reputation for
I-
being able to deal with like
She
very
was good
hard
at that.
cases. She was good at that. But again, that's also one of those things you probably can't do really.
Well,
like
she spoke openly
without-
about being a child who experienced that
Yeah.
herself, so she was able to do. That's why everyone says, "Well, why did you guys used to write about the good work she did?" It's because it's the same police officer who's a good human being.
But because
Can have a
people are
change.
complex.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
People
Thank
are
you.
complex and nuanced, and given in any situation, who's to say what we would do in any situation?
Exactly.
If we're pushed up against the wall, or circumstances bear out a kind of way.
Exactly. And you know, this is what I'm about to say. Please don't take out of context. I'm not blaming the victim. But the reality is, up until like Mr. Cox should have been safe in police custody, because the fact of the matter was he was picked up because he had a gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was either going to shoot or get shot that night, and that's a real reality. Like that's a thing that in the focus on everything else. Like had this not happened, at the very least, some shootings might have been prevented. That
Did
night.
you watch the video of the actual arrest?
I cannot watch that.
No, the arrest part.
He was arrested without incident. I mean, he was.
Yeah.
Everybody, him and the officers, they came into what could be a tense situation. A very busy, active block party on Lilac Street. They hear this guy has a gun. They stopped him in a way that was so de-escalating. It was the opposite of everything. They kind of pulled him and said, "Hey,
So
I
for it
talked to
to
you."
end as
And
badly
he
as it
handled
did is
yeah, I mean, it was
so
really. I
painful.
was impressed with him and the cops. That's
Yeah.
a tough situation there.
And I think he probably knew at that moment, like whatever he was facing and the reason he had a gun, the best thing that should have been for him that night was to get picked up by the police, because you off the street. So whoever's looking to shoot you can get you if you're in police custody. So the fact that he got hurt in police custody is so
I know.
painful to me, because it should have been the safest
And
place
this
he
could
should
be
have been
wrong.
that
And
night.
what we're hearing about something,
It's so
we knew
painful
that
for me.
Betsy Segee has had a downward trend on her career. Some of the officers we hear very, very good things about. So if people say, is it because of ingrained white supremacy, the black and Latino? Is it because of the what Betsy Segee was setting as the tone at the top? Oscar Diaz, the driver, who was not driving safely and made the wrong call, because it either taken him right to the hospital, because it was just a direct shot.
But that's
or-
the protocol,
right?
No, I think the protocol, if I'm not mistaken, that they say it's a little unclear, was actually not take him anywhere. Get the ambulances there, because if
And
your
let
neck,
the ambulance
the
take
neck and spine, you're not supposed to move him anymore, because there's no seatbelt there. He could get banged around again.
Right.
So a lot of things probably happened to Richard Cox that might have contributed. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
That might have contributed to why he's still on a
His-
breathing tube and feeding tube, or maybe it was the original thing. But he got banged around a lot after.
Right.
And I didn't know this, but everyone tells me that it's any EMT, but any Boy Scout or Girl Scout. Like you learn at 12 years old, if it's a neck or spine injury, you never move the person. So have this Oscar Diaz, who is known as this like giving, very humane person. If you notice his first check, he sounded a lot different from how he sounded at the lockup under Betsy Segee. Something happened. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, I got another one for you, a totally different subject. Ready? And this is this is a trick question.
Here we go. They're all trick
When I
questions.
say who said this,
You say.
I'm gonna give
Nobody said it.
I'm gonna give you away the trick. Who said it can be singular? Who said it can be plural? Ready? Quote. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour.
Frederick Douglass.
He was one of the people who said it. He said it.
A lot of people still saying it.
He said it in 1852. Who said it? Who said it this week?
I did, I think.
Yes, that's Rose Ivy. And what was the circumstance? Why did Frederick Douglass say this in
What to the
1852?
slave is the 4th of July.
And why was this said again this
Plymouth
week?
Rock didn't land on. Okay.
Because the Beinecke landed on us.
Oh my God.
The Beinecke does this public read of the Declaration
So
of
good.
Independence and what to the American slave is the 4th of July oration by Frederick Douglass.
They're quite, and they also read some other documents too. Like that one was a speech.
Oh yeah, they had the Seneca Falls movement read.
That's some powerful stuff, and
William
it's so interesting to me.
Grimes, and I'll say one more thing: the petition of a number of slaves who were petitioning for their freedom from Connecticut, from New
Connecticut
Haven,
in New
from
Haven.
New Haven specifically.
Yeah.
It was great.
And they do that every year. Michael Moran kind of brings that together.
Well, they
Beinecke.
added these new things this year because it made it all part
They
of.
do a very good job of adding new things because of the context of what is happening in the world. It responds so
That's what I
well
was
to
gonna
what's
say,
happening in
and
the
it
world.
kind of resonated this year. And then the people they pick, like Babs to read, it's just perfect. Like people's today's version, the people have the
Yes.
consciousness of Frederick Douglass back in the 1850s. It's
And
awesome.
the thing that each person adds to it, right? Like the way the flow of it, this year they switched the readers around a bit, but Eric Clemens was the first reader, and Eric has a very kind of quiet presence, and so he starts it out very quiet, and then by the time we get to what's the lady, is her name Tracy? That
Reverend Tracy at the end.
I mean,
Tracy
it is
Lucky.
booming by the end. It
Yeah.
is, whew, it's powerful. I really think,
What a great
people
annual
are
event.
constantly in this country talking about what the founders meant. And I was like, but do y'all read these documents? Because we read them in New Haven. And I think it's such a powerful thing to interact with these documents and to hear how salient they are to this day. Even the Declaration of Independence, the thing that we said or was said about the founding of the country and the breaking away of Great Britain, like those things, and then it forces us. It's a mirror. It pokes us in the eye and says, "Is this your king? Because this is what you said. Is this?" Because what I see is y'all taking rights from people while yet yelling about your rights. And didn't the British be like, so y'all yelling about independence, but y'all got slaves over here? Tell me how that's supposed to work. So I think every American city should do this, and they should add the documents that are relevant to their communities. I'm twisting Mike Moran's arm because I want him to, because they added the Seneca Falls stuff, but of course the Seneca Falls was a racist movement. That was about white women. It was not about all women. And you can't talk about the rights of all without talking about black women. So I'm advocating for some Ida B. Wells, some Nanny Burroughs,
Harriet,
somebody.
Yes.
So this is a great tradition.
But it's fantastic.
Every Independence Day weekend in New Haven.
Yes.
yes.
Is
I
that
love
is
it.
that
It's
the
my
only
favorite tradition.
Is that the oldest one or the only tradition we have in New Haven for July 4th?
I mean, we have fireworks the day before.
I wonder if there's anything else. Well, let me throw that question in the air and ask you who said the following.
Uh-oh.
The United States is the only Christian nation ever founded in the world. We should keep the spirit of 1776 forever in our hearts.
Christian nation.
Is that City Yankee or 1644?
This was part of an event that takes place every year, the oldest July 4th event.
The Sons of the American Revolution.
Yes!
Yeah.
So they go to,
She's like our local Jeopardy celebrity.
and she is, no question. I mean, if we had money, I'm sorry we don't have money, Lucy. If we had money, man, you'd
You
be
could give
rich.
out tokens.
You would beat that guy
It's
who
just
was
because
like,
I read the indie.
So every year at Grove Street Cemetery, Mike Moran's there too.
Yes.
We talk
He's
about
everywhere.
the
He's everywhere.
Revolutionary
This is
War
his
people.
moment, man. It's
The
his
Sons
season.
of the American Revolution go out there and have an event. And that statement was from Chaplain Richard Kendall as part of an official Grove Street Cemetery, Sons of the American Revolution. What do you think of that statement? How's that fit with
I
Frederick
think
Douglass?
it's false to the.
Well, the reason
to quote Frederick Douglass.
Nora Grace Flood wrote an article about it, but what she focused on, she did have that great quote. The folks' story was that you had all these white people there, descendants of people fought. There was an African American man named Calvin Alexander Ramsey, who was a filmmaker. He just moved to New Haven, and I think Michael might have brought him. Someone brought him there and was showing him. And it turns out he was looking at some of the black soldiers we never hear about, including he discovered his fifth great-great-grandfather who joined. His name was John Epps. He joined the militia.
I love that.
Nora has this great photo of all the white Sons of the American Revolution and this guy in the middle. And and he said he's going to bring that story and the other story of black people forgotten history into documentaries.
I mean, we're in every part of the fabric of this country.
And the city.
And listen, I will tell you, as someone who lived, I probably told this story before, but someone who of course is mostly from the South, essentially. When I first came to New Haven and saw the statue in the little square near Broadway, I was like, why do they have Confederate statues in New Haven? I was like, oh, the Union won. This is the North. I was like, oh, I hadn't lived anywhere where there were statues for Union soldiers. I love that. So I hope we get him a statue. That'd be awesome.
Pundit Thursday. WNHHFM. Babs Rawls Ivy, Markeisha Ricks, Lucy Gelman. We're going over the stories of the week and who said what and why. Quote. This might not be the liveliest quote of the week.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Quote. This was said in public. Or maybe not. Was it read in public?
I think people ought to be quiet.
Okay.
Stop talking.
Resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, U.S. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Chris Murphy, and other appropriate officials.
Is this a Cuba resolution? No, that was last
Lucy
week.
Gelman, you cannot defeat.
I like that she knows
I do too. I love it.
because it takes me a little minute to think
will
about
say
it.
One day I'm going to have a question that stumps Lucy Gelman. I'm going to feel like I've done my work on Earth. Okay, that was this week, though.
When I heard about this, the first thing I said was, I hope Seth Godfrey was there. And then the story was about Seth. And
So
I was
just to let
happy.
everyone know, this week, Tuesday night, the
Was
the
that
Board
this
of Alders. Yes. Well, we had a previous story when it came up to hearing. This week, the New Haven Board of Alders has taken the lead in world diplomacy. Now, we did screw up, like reevaluating our property in towns, so some lords and mega developers
tomatoes,
money from more people.
It's fine.
But they took the stand, folks. They passed a resolution saying, come on, Joe Biden, we call on you and the country to end the embargo with Cuba, and restore diplomatic relations with Cuba.
I don't know why we still, with this Cuba.
Things had gotten better under Obama, but then something happened
Right,
under
Obama
Trump.
opened the door to Cuba, which we all know is way overdue, but because of the influence of a small dying generation of swing voters in what used to be a swing state, the politics. So Donald Trump undid all that. So the question is, Biden hasn't moved quickly enough to reestablish.
He's got a lot on his plate.
Biden's like, the world is literally on fire.
Listen,
So my question is-
honestly, he should do it while everybody's distracted.
I know.
Babs used to
A
be
page from the Republicans.
Yeah.
Babs
I
used
would
to
just
be
quietly do it and be like, oh, look, vaccine. Oh, look,
Surprise.
inflation.
Surprise. Yeah.
Ooh, I kind of like that. See that?
Oh, look, I fell off my bike.
That's excellent.
I would just,
You know, I think you should go to the campaign school and start telling politicians what to do.
I mean, they should just ask me.
So my question to Babs used to be an alder. And those of us who have not been alders, we always say, you know, the alders have such a hard time figuring out what to do about the stuff they have power over, what they're spending money on, what city policies are. But they pass all these resolutions for what they want to have happen in the world that they have no power over. So some people say that's so then they can look at, so like they put a lot of effort.
Because they're like, we all agree on this stuff. This is other stuff we don't agree on.
Some people say it's still important to do that. That's citizens grassroots movements, because I happen to agree with them completely on Cuba. So citizens grassroots movements are important to have local legislatures weigh in, whether it's a nuclear freeze or universal health care. Other people say it's such a waste of time and unnecessarily meddling in issues they're not part of that distracts and lets them take credit as they run for election and please certain interest groups without actually doing the job. So should we have a foreign policy?
Absolutely, we should have a foreign
We're a
policy.
world-class city.
We're
Go
a
on.
world-class city. Listen, let me tell you why. The International Festival of Arts Ideas would probably love to take folks to Cuba
They actually want to because there's a Cuban Havana Jazz Festival in
we
January.
need to be able to sort of. It's not just. It's a lot of things. You know, we are a city of the arts. We are a city of a lot of intellectual capital by virtue of universities. We ought to have that as part of our a feather in our cap, that we have international relations.
So I
with places.
I phrased it wrong, because of course we all love the Sister Cities movement and the exchange of intellectual work and
it
artistic
also isn't
work.
that big of a waste of time. I don't think it takes them that long to do.
No.
But should the Board of Alders pass non-binding resolutions on international and national issues?
Can it be like a both and not
Yeah.
an either or, right?
Yeah.
Like yes, and can they be a more effective governing body?
So I think
that is
you
the
folks are
question.
correct. I guess what bugs me is I feel like they take credit for courage. I'm not going to name names, but there's certain Alders, they'll say, I got this passed. We're taking on this big issue that's, racial disparities and healthcare and all that. But meanwhile, when you have to do something to undo the racial disparities in education, or
You don't do it.
Yeah,
I feel you.
Right.
Oh no, I know. Listen, it's
Or we're
a
giving
bit
tax
of a
breaks away,
hypocrisy
and you're
to
moving-
be courageous and then not be courageous.
but they're courageous about the stuff that
Right.
does not have any risk to them, does not require courage.
Well, that's my point. Like,
But not for nothing, isn't that government in a nutshell? Like everybody's government though.
I mean, this was like
isn't that Congress?
in
I mean, like-
April. Didn't we have a non-binding resolution about like we like Ukrainians? Like it was something like that. Like Ukraine is cool. We
Like, we
like
like
them.
them.
We don't believe
We don't think Russia should be able to
yeah.
blow them up.
Yeah,
just
I mean, it was something
arbitrarily.
like that. And again, I was like, well, sure, I agree with this. And I want them to be more like, if they could talk more openly about ARPA money.
I need you to care
if
about
they could-
Ukrainian,
yeah,
but I also need you to care about kids reading in schools
Yes.
and what that should look
yes,
like.
yes.
And take an official stand about it, right? Like,
Quote, ready? We need faces like you.
Oh,
We need folks like you. Who said that and why?
come on, Lucy. We were like,
I don't know.
I'm thinking.
Did the mayor say this to like white people? I don't.
This is a story by Laura Gillespie.
we
from the homepage
we
of The
really don't
Independent.
have enough white men. And
gotta say it like
So
that.
Leslie
Yeah.
Radcliffe, community activist in
Oh,
the Hill.
Leslie.
Leslie was
So this would
recruiting for the
have.
police.
So the police department has 70 vacancies out of 406.
Whoa.
So and they're about to have 5 more of color.
70?
yeah, they're about to have fun.
So they say we need cops. So the way
That's a
one of the ways they're
lot.
going out to get cops is they're going in the Hill, and it's not just the cops they're going and saying to people on the street, "We need cops. Here's some information. We'd love you to try to be a cop." Leslie Radcliffe is a community activist. Says, and she said this to a gentleman named Timur Marcy Ramos.
Yeah,
They
'cause
started
he was-
with 7-year-old kids who said, "I want to be a cop one day." They gave them stuff, but then like this guy who has another job said, "I was thinking about it," and Leslie says, "Do you know what the health care and the pension benefits are?" He said, "Well, I was thinking about cop. Maybe this makes you think about it more. Here's the flyer." I would argue this is a really good way to try to replenish our police force. It's hard to get anyone to be a cop these days. To have people from a community go out to people in their community and say, we want our people to be police officers.
hasn't
guess
this
that's
been
pretty
an effort
non-controversial.
forever?
Yeah.
Hasn't
I propose a non-binding resolution of this show to congratulate Leslie Radcliffe and the New Haven Police Department for
Oh,
doing it.
Leslie's great. I love her.
Great, man.
And we're doing that on Pundits Thursday. Oops. On
Pundits Friday on
WNHH,
Thursday.
On HH 103.5 M live stream newhaven.org. Who said
But
this?
I think Leslie said this, and I think it's you also have to this is going to be Carl's work and the work of all of his folks is how do you build that kind of trust, because Leslie still believes in the police department and believes that it can be a great place. There are lots of people who don't feel that way, and so there's a lot of work to do. It's a lot of work to do. So if Carl can do that work, and if he's prepared to do that work, then yay. but yeah, there's a lot of repair work that has to happen between for police officers. I think there are police officers who are like, I'm out. This game is no.
Or if you're a cop of color and you got a good record, you go to the suburbs where they're paying you more and they're recruiting you and you're not going to get shot.
Yeah. So it's a lot.
Who said this, folks? The uh-oh. You're married to someone who says uh-oh a lot. Quote, COVID blew that hotel out of the water.
What?
I'm seeing Lucy's brain work.
COVID blew the hotel out of water?
COVID blew that
That hotel.
You want
What,
a little-
somebody trying to build a hotel?
Yes!
Okay.
Is it the
No,
Marcel Hotel?
No, that
though?
one
No, the
opened.
Marcel's done.
It
But
opened.
blew it
That's,
out.
Nice.
that's relevant. On Long Wharf, they made the old
Yeah.
Pirelli building to a new hotel,
which-
zero carbon neutral, and it opened in the pandemic.
Is this hotel over here getting built?
You got
Oh,
it, Babs.
finally?
Okay, no,
No.
it blew it out of the water.
Oh, it's over. They're not going to build it.
Eight-
They also they misused that phrase. That's like poor grammar, but that's fine.
Lucy's
So like, that's
also,
why it don't make sense.
Lucy's
If you
also an
blew
editor.
something out of the water, it's like superlative.
Because I
It's
thought
good.
it meant it
Yeah.
like, I actually thought it meant it like finally dynamited it out of like
stagnation. Yeah.
stagnation. Exactly.
That's a really good point. I forgot the point where he also
Okay.
said so to speak.
No, I understood it.
Clay-
I did not understand
Clay
it.
Fowler said that he's the owner of Spinnaker Group, which builds stuff around New Haven, like the
Yeah.
Autoron project. Tom Breen had a story that even though we're in a boom, and stuff's getting built like light and rough so fast. I mean, 4 huge projects in Worcester Square within 2 blocks of each other, like close to 1,000 apartments.
Yeah.
But there are 4 projects in town where we gave permissions and everything, and
And
nothing's
nothing's
happening.
happened.
And this one happens to be the corner of Orange and Elm, where they tore down historic bank
I mean,
building.
Yeah,
it was
they
a big
tore it.
deal.
Yeah, and an old church, and it's been a hole in the ground for years during COVID. Now it's been COVID. So what he's saying, because Tom Brown said, like, what's going on? He said, well, actually, I can't get the financing anymore that I was going to get to build the hotel there. He said, first of all, we're going to change it. This is what hotel we're going to try to build. We were trying to build a Hilton Garden Inn. Now, other hotels have been built around there, and there isn't much travel now. We're going to go for something more boutique-y maybe. We're going to call it Tempo, but it might not happen at all.
Listen, the pandemic separated the wheat from the chaff because I
Ooh,
watched.
that's good.
I watched I've seen there's been a bunch of stories about apartments in New Haven and Hartford here lately that I've been noticing, and I was like, and I'm gonna leave it to the New Haven Independent to do this story because there are a lot of stall projects in the city actually. So there's that what's happened to where that old Foot Locker used to be in those plots of land.
That's one of the 4.
That's
Paul Den's.
what happened to if you go further down Chapel Street where the mural was.
You talking about the nice
And it was like a
Coliseum?
dog park. No, farther down,
those-
like
Oh, like in
Chapel
Worcester
West.
Square.
No, Chapel
No,
West.
no.
So there was that
Oh,
mural
the
right
swoon
there, the
mural.
swoon mural.
Yeah.
There were supposed to be apartments that were going in there. What happened to that?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, next
that hasn't
next to
happened.
1184 Chapel.
Is the behind that is the gas station project on?
That is not on.
Oh.
That's a good one too on House Street.
So there are a bunch of
Oh.
smaller projects. So I was like, whatever happened. But the people who had big money, Randy Salvatore building,
well,
he's building over
Spinnaker
there.
has big money,
The big money guys have been able to still
but
build.
they have 2 of the big ones.
The smaller guys, I feel like.
Well, that's true with Den's, as you mentioned, but Spinnaker's big, and they had both that Orange and Elm slot and the old Coliseum site, which he's the
That
second.
seems to still be on, or at least that's what they told the
That's what
Hartford
the
Business Journal.
Yeah, but it still hasn't happened. He said he still thinks it's going to.
Where they have the parking lot now? It's gonna be hard to give up that parking lot.
Well, they could put a parking lot at the bottom of it.
I guess.
They could do an underground parking lot.
quote. Who said this? Quote.
Oh, he told y'all something different. He told the Hartford Business Journal.
Quote.
Because he was like, "Oh, it's all
You
great."
like Tom Breen has a story in depth about these 4 projects. You'd like it. It's interesting. I recommend.
I will have to look at this because
listeners,
I was reading that. I was like, these people don't know New Haven.
quote.
They don't know.
This, but you're right. We left out those 2: the gas station and whether it's about big versus small.
And and the clock tower.
Oh, he
place.
wrote about that.
Okay,
That fell
that's in there.
apart.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
That
Because
fell
I've been wondering,
apart.
what happened.
But they
to the
are
clock?
They are starting the one in New Hallville on Muncie Street finally.
Yes.
Yeah, we see. I
That
see
had
the
to do
But
with
I think
shady
that's probably
dealings
what
before.
I wonder too, and I don't know if he gets into this in an article. I will read it. If some of these smaller ones are hoping they get bought, because that's how the Munson Street got back on, which is that they finally worked out a deal that they could finance it.
But that
And
Munson Street is a big project.
Yeah.
it is, and I'm surprised that the Coliseum one isn't a bigger
I have
project.
a different theory about that.
Okay.
The Coliseum project from the beginning.
it feels like it
public
should be
policy
like
was
500
driven
apartments.
by what we'd like it to be. So we had this group, Live, Work, Learn, Play.
Yeah, I remember.
And everyone in town loved them because they built all the kind of mix of everything they wanted, not what the market would bear. So we spent years and they didn't get any investors, so they dropped out. So, and actually in this article with Tom Breen, Fowler is open saying this is a little harder to do because it's public-private and they want us to do a lot of stuff we got to get the money for. Sometimes you got to go with what the market Can't say
I
And
mean, I
that's-
always believe that. I think we spend a lot of time trying to play this game about,
want a
we
candy
build
store.
retail space on the bottom and a da-da-da-da top. And I'm like, retail is dead.
And have you ever noticed how many empty retail
There's
spots
so
are on the
many
side?
empty
How many
ones.
restaurants can you put?
On
or
80 High
boutiques
Street,
or-
that I
Yeah.
can't get anything in
And
there.
even for the not like New Haven hasn't had new restaurants come on, but
It has.
they've gone into almost older buildings. Like they're
Yes.
like because that rent is too
Existing,
high.
yeah.
Well, and I think
So this-
a lot of them are using, just really quickly, the same thing that we've seen in other cities. So the use of ghost kitchens, quote unquote. A lot of people are using that because they've realized overhead costs are so expensive. Like
Right.
having a brick and mortar is really risky, especially now. But if you're running a delivery business, you can still break pretty even, and you can rent a kitchen. Yeah,
Here's my bugaboo.
especially if you have a hookup.
We lived
Yeah.
with Les in New Haven during urban renewal. Said Jane Jacobs liked the way we had a mix of everything. We had a store in the front, apartments above, some open space nearby, and that the mistake we made, we said she was right, is we tore down all the stuff and tried to create these single use buildings, and planners shouldn't do that. We should do it with the market bare, because in the old days, in her day, people wanted to build that because it worked.
Right.
But now, to Babs's point, when we build a project, we force them. Well, we want to
Have
go
retail
back to
space.
that, so let's put a store on the first floor. But that doesn't work anymore.
Like you can't force it to happen
So
just
the
because that's what you
lesson
prefer to
was
happen.
rather the picture of what existed in 1950 drives the policy rather than the lesson of let people make individual
That's right.
decisions about what they could afford to do. They can't put their life savings into a store there because it's not going to work, but they can put 5 apartments and that's going to work.
Right. Even though New Haven is a fun place because I am reading stories from a place I used to live, Tuscaloosa, and the city officials there for a building there, like someone's doing an apartment building downtown, and they want to do like 1-bedroom studios, 1-bedrooms, up to like 2-bedroom apartments, and the city officials are making them or have delayed them another 6 weeks to be able to say we want more family oriented apartments in this building. I was like, New Haven would never. Like people be like, can we get but they're 2 bedrooms, right? Like so, and that's fine. Like in Alabama, you can rent an actual house. You don't actually have to live in an apartment. But if you want to live downtown, you want to live that life, fine. But they're like, yeah, take that back. We're gonna delay you another. Like they're on their second delay of 6 weeks delay. I was like, somebody got plenty of money because here they'd have been like, scrap the whole building. Because if that's what you want, the market definitely is no. But we're like, can we just have 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms? They're like, no, we want layouts that are more family centric. They're like, this is going to encourage college students to live here, and that's not what we want.
Uh-oh.
I was like, dang. I was like, I couldn't see it happen. Because they'd be like, first of all, we're going to sue you because there's
we
no
certainly don't
regulation
want
that says that. And also, they're like, this is the financing. You see the financing? The financing says I have to get this built in 12 weeks. And if we don't start tomorrow with micro apartments, that's it. So,
Who said the following, folks? This system is not broken.
who said that?
It was designed
Oh,
to do exactly what it is doing.
Yes.
Oh,
A bunch of people
Oh, no,
said
no,
that.
I read this.
Oh. it was at the social justice reader. So, well, that was verbatim a quote of a young lady, young person who spoke at the Institute Library. But
Oh, yeah, what about?
but I'm
State
guessing
too.
Ben Crump. No.
Give you a hint.
She was
Dory?
talking about police
I was gonna say, was it
abolition,
Dory?
and she was right.
I'll give you a
Because
hint.
that sounds like something
It-
black
Dory
folks
would
would
say.
say.
Correct race.
So it was somebody black.
Mhm.
Was it a woman?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So if
There-
it wasn't Dory Dumas,
There
it
was
had
an
to be-
event in New Harville last week convened by Devin Avshalom Smith about what people are doing to fight violence.
Kim.
Close. And it was and the point being made here by Robin Porter, the state.
Oh.
It was a summit.
You were close.
It was a summit about how we're going to fight violence. And it's all individual groups who I think do a lot of good work. Connecticut VIP, Violence Prevention Project was there.
yeah.
Sport Academy, the father who his son was killed, and he's now helping all these kids. And you
The
have
gardener,
official
he's the
people.
gardener guy.
And we got a bunch of other people, community resilience. So Gary Winfield, he's not Holder. Gary Winfield made the point. He's state senator saying, in fact, this is about poverty as much as about violence. It stems from poverty, and the system is designed to. It's a policy choice. We have policy choices that make people poor, and are at the root of this that we have to change. And that's what Robin Porter was seconding on. She said.
Yes.
No, it's absolutely true.
So usually, those meetings are like, well, you're hearing the same old thing. We knew all these people doing these groups, and you're not going to have a magic bullet. I thought it was kind of cool to see how many people, as the summer starts, are really working in real life in real time with young people, trying to make it better. And they were putting their
I
heads
think
together.
I think it's always been the case. I just think people are just noticing, or the media is just paying attention to the work that goes on in community. That has always been going on in community.
And the challenge Devin gave us, you're doing this work, but can you work together and address more of the root of the problem?
I think community is already doing that. I mean, you've got places that are feeding people, making sure that there's
a place for kids to go,
things
summer
to go, activities.
Yeah. Like, not for nothing, I feel like New Haven is rich in these kinds of resources. People who say that they don't know what these are, it's like, you're not looking very hard, because you're almost tripping over like Ife tells us about like all the things that she would have Raven in, and now she has her nieces and nephews in, because she's, you can be resourceful and put together things. Like, it's a lot of work to put all those things together because they're run by different people. But like, there's so many things to do. That said, none of those programs to the point of solving the root. I don't think it's those programs' job to solve the root of things that government should take care of.
Because they can't do anything about hiring people,
and they can't scale
and livable wages and all of that.
Exactly.
What we can do is keep your kids safe,
right? Like they're doing what they can do, right? Like they're taking up the slack. They're taking up the charge to keep something going when school lets out, so that kids don't get in trouble or don't get harmed or whatever the case may be. But we can't do it. Those groups can't take guns off the street. Like but if the government stopped putting guns in people's hands and letting it happen, that'd be a different thing.
And scalability. I mean, that's
issue.
the biggest one. I think of Chaz Carman, who I think also was at that roundtable. He's doing incredible work with young people with Ice the Beef, including using the arts as an anti-violence prevention method,
which he has been doing for
so
literally
long.
Since I've known him.
I mean, transformative guy, but it is a program that can only sustain so much growth.
Exactly.
Yeah. But all these programs, I mean, that goes for LEAP. That goes for the Boys and Girls Club. That goes for the Barbell Club that is trying to reopen in the Hill. I mean, we have got to change our minds about one thing to be all for all people.
Exactly.
That can't be,
because those programs are providing activities, and they're like, oh, these kids are hungry, so now we have to feed them. And oh, somebody's parent works till whenever, so somebody needs to stay a little later. Like, those are things that government, like to your point about doing hard things, using the government to do courageous things, those are all problems that the government can fix.
Okay, I'm not putting up the music to lead us out today, because I got something else I want to play that's more like coming at you with the words right at the end trying to talk. But my last question is, it's July. The festival's over. Established institutions have kind of run down.
That's what ran us ragged, man.
So you folks were seen everywhere 5 times a day on social media. I never went out of my house, but I felt like I was there in New Haven watching all the stuff you went to. What's it going to be now? Where are we going to see you?
Beach time and the porch time.
Beach time.
And what about regular places?
There's so much happening too.
Yeah, well, what about like regular places you go that don't have special galas and shows coming in, like Cafe Vin, Pistachio, 3 Sheets, Cafe 9 Jazzies?
We go to all those places. Like all summer long, and most of the Yale people are gone, so we can enjoy them.
And can I shout out a new business? Shout out the juice place on Chapel. It's really good.
What's the juice place?
It's in like an old storefront that was abandoned for years. And it's this one woman running a juice bar, which sounds hippy dippy, but it's really, really good. It is on Chapel, like if you go beyond the Eblen's, the foot store. Like a couple.
Eblen's on Whaley.
Eblen's is, it's on Whaley.
So what am I thinking of? The shoe store on Chapel. There's like, if you go to the corner.
Is it Chapel West or down here, Chapel?
It's Chapel and Church. And then if you keep going before you get to Orange Street, it's
you're going east.
Yeah, she's decorated the walls with ivy. Yeah.
Oh, I want to check
It's really good. It's really good.
Okay, so between Church and Orange, where we were talking earlier, is pockmarked block because nothing's getting built in half of it.
Well, she's in there.
All right, we got to check this out. Thank you, Lucy. Yes. And we're not going to do a fade out with music. I'm just going to thank Markeisha Riggs, Babs Rose, Lucy Gilman. I have to mention, I'll be honest with us, when I hear you folks talking about this stuff, I think this is the most interesting, intelligent, and fun way to look at news I can imagine hearing anywhere. And part of me sometimes thinks, as a local journalist, I said, well, shouldn't Markeisha be on NPR like everyone hearing this in the country? Then I think it's okay to be what we are.
I was like, get off the air.
And have it best. So I'm going to go
to overtime.
Okay, we're going to go
Harry's
leave it out with
out.
America, since we're talking about America, from the Blue Jays on WNHH.
to shine all the diamonds in the rough. I think it's time to take a stand. Enough is enough, call they bluff. Cause I don't think you really understand. If we come together, we don't have to blame the man. Don't need no 40 acres, just give me the whole land. Diversion is created just to see you from the plan. Goddamn, I'm just trying to spit the knowledge, take notes. How you sink a ship when you're in the same boat? Try to hit a stroke, but we can't stay afloat. Something's out of order, but they swear it ain't broke. That's a joke, cause we ain't even got the same rights. And even if I get it, gotta put up a fight. And I ain't really saying that I got the answer key, cause really all I want is for my people to be free, to be free. The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free. The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free.
America, checking for your pulse. 49 heartbeats, they profited enough. Family, struck down in our month of pride. Praying on your knees, who will stand? Get up and fight. Get up, act up and fight.
Black, white, brown, multiracial and Asian, but none of us were here until they took it from the natives. Then we turned around and had a nerve to be racist. Justify the use of religious discrimination. Now the terror got us in the palm of their hand, but we can't get together to create a counter plan. Violence, silence, rising riots, innocent dying, government lying. Can't get ahead cause we all do consume with who I sleep with and where I use the restroom. I'm just trying to tell you that I got the antidote. Campaign for love, let peace win the vote. Feel like giving up, but I still got hope. Respecting every person, that will really be dope. You can stand with love or fall from the hate. Let's adopt one label for ourselves, human race.
Oh yes, we should pray for Orlando, like we prayed for Sandy Hook, San Bernardino. Or stop going to the movies and stop going to the club. Even kindergartners should be carrying a gun. Stonewall was a riot after prayers were not enough. So won't you stand up? Won't you stand up? America, checking for your pulse.
The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free. The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free. Now what we want, peace, and who is us? We. So just let us be and live in harmony. Now what we want, peace, and who is us? We. So just let us be and live in harmony.